Right, here we go. So once again, welcome everybody to the Whisky Circus. Thank you for all coming along. As most of you know, we're now here to decide which is going to be the next single cask bottle your own for Glen Moray. And fantastically, we've got Ian from Glen Moray who's going to introduce himself and take us through each of the 4 drams that we've got, and then we'll announce which one has won. So over to you, Ian.
Okay, thanks, Soren. Thanks for letting me take over your Whisky Circus for this afternoon.
I didn't say you could take over, I just said you could come on.
Well, Glen Moray's taking over. It's a Glen Moray takeover. Yeah, first of all, how is everybody? How's lockdown going? Everybody in good spirits as much as you can be? It's been a while. I can't remember when it was. When was it? July, August? Which back then we probably didn't think we would still be at lockdown come, what are we, February now? I lose track of months, possibly even years, as we progress through the groundhog that is lockdown. But yeah, this was an idea that I came up with drunkenly sitting on my sofa one evening. I can't remember who I was speaking to on Twitter, and I did that foolish thing of thinking aloud, not actually thinking through those logistics to be done on this. One of which was the fact that I had miniature bottles but no tops, because I very kindly helped out a local distillery who had done a rebrand and a pack launch, and their PR company had ordered bottles but forgot caps. So when I go back to the distillery and decided to bottle these up, I realized I had no caps left. So I had to order caps. And as a lot of you found out, in particular Ed, those caps didn't fit properly. So first of all, apologies, or not apologies, because I bet all your packages smelt lovely when they arrived.
Yeah.
But a little bit soggier than I had intended originally. So apologies about that. So hopefully everybody, thanks for the soggy boxes. That's I should have remembered the tone that is set by the Whisky Circus. So hopefully everybody has enough. Ed was the only one I actually had to send out another sample. Although, do we have proof that any of Ed's leaked, or did we just get asked for another sample?
Well, exactly.
That's the question I'm asking myself.
Yeah, I am a designer by trade, so it could be photoshopped.
So hopefully you all had enough to sample in the midweek and then come back this afternoon and still have enough left in the bottle that we can carry on drinking on a 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
I'll just jump in here before you go any further. When we get to divulging what each cask is, can we just have 5 minutes and we'll just go around and see what people have actually guessed as what each cask was as we go along, if that's all right?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of the best way. I thought what we'll do is we'll take each whiskey one by one.
Yeah.
Okay. Drinking 2 whiskies at once is quite challenging. And we'll go through it, talk about the style of whiskey, go around the table, get everybody to pitch in what they thought it was or think it is. And then I'll reveal it prior to going on to the next whiskey. Basically, what you're selecting is cask A for our bottle your own. We call them cask A, B, and C at the distillery because we've got the 3 options. And there is a criteria that we kind of follow through each of these. So I thought I would kind of break down the criteria that we have for cask A. You know, there are some things that won't make it into the list. For cask A and B are completely non-peated because cask C is peated. So there is nothing peated in here. So if any of you think any of these whiskies are peated, you're probably in the wrong space. You can leave right now because there's no smokiness in any of these whiskies. The other thing about cask A is it's our kind of entry level. We've only got 2 levels, so our kind of cheaper expression at £55. So 10-year-old is the oldest expression you will have in the mix. And the other criteria applied to cask A is that the casks have to be relatively available to us. They can't be too rare because they may be needed for another release or part of our private cask release, which is what we do globally around the world. So there's going to be nothing too rare or unique about any of the casks that we've got thrown into the mix. So kind of that's the first kind of criteria we have to apply selecting them. Cask B is the £99 one. We can go a little bit older, but we still can't really break the 20-year barrier with that one. Again, it's to be non-peated. And cask C is immediately inhibited by age because it has to be peated, and we only have 10-year-old peated stock, so we can only choose younger expressions, hence why it falls into the £55 category. So normally when selecting a cask, we'll apply that criteria, have a look through what we've got on the system, look for 8 casks, pull out 8 cask samples, and then narrow it down from there. So I've kind of taken that 8 cask approach and narrowed it down to 4 and sent those out to you guys, and those are the ones that you're choosing from today. So basically that's how we would normally go about the approach, but thought this would be a fun thing to do. As I say, decided it late one Saturday night. Who was it I was speaking to? I can't even remember who I was talking to at the time. But anyway, we've got where we are today. So
I think it was me and Christoph once, eh?
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. But I'd had a few glasses of wine. Seemed like a good idea at the time, and it is. I think it is a nice thing to do. So, cask 1. This is the oldest in the mix. So cask A, should I say? Hopefully they didn't leak so much that A, B, C, and D hasn't kind of cleared off from your labels. Has everybody got them in front of them?
Yeah.
So here you're looking at a 2010 cask. Still 10 years old, not quite reaching the 11 years, which would kind of discount it from selection for this process. I'm probably going to do this through, rather than me just revealing everything, kind of making this up as we go along. It might work, it might not, it might have too much chatter. We'll see how it goes. We can adjust as we progress through the afternoon. Does anybody want to chuck in any guesses for the strength of this whiskey?
I would have said late 50s.
Anybody else? You can either type it in. I like people who are accurate. 57.8, 52.4. We'll see who gets closest. We'll give it a few minutes, a few seconds to get everybody in, and it'll probably scroll so quickly I won't be able to remember who's winning. And here we go, getting a few. Nobody's even got the right single digit. Never mind point digit.
60.
Nope. Let's just say Jamie's closest so far.
Ah.
As everybody readjusts their guesses as they kind of have a look through. They're all cask strength, and in the younger expressions. This one I think stood out because when I say I take 8 samples, I generally take 2 from the batch of casks. So they're all kind of, they're duplicates of a kind of sister casks that we'll take. And I'll take the best of the 2 to narrow it down to the 4. So I'll take 2 of A, 2 of B, 2 of C, 2 of D, if that makes sense. And this one stood out, I think, because of the strength. It kind of surprised me a little bit. Given
Oh, no.
The suspense.
The age of it and given the style. So for the age of this, it's got a kind of... oh, for some reason, my internet connection is unstable. Can you still see me and hear me?
Yeah, we lost
you for a moment, but you're back.
Don't know if you gave us any important information in that, but you did freeze.
Yeah, I gave you the most important information of all. No, so it's...
Was that the discount code?
Yes. So, I'll take 2 of A, 2 of B, 2 of C, and 2 of D, and pick the best of them. And for me, I think the kind of lower ABV kind of created a kind of softness and elegance to this whiskey. I think the other one was a little bit more abrasive is not the right word. It's just that this one stood out that little bit further. Wonderfully sweet, which is kind of hallmark and typical traditional Glen Moray, and foam bananas, as Fia's just chucked in there. It's something which is quite traditional Glen Moray, kind of that sweet shop type character and profile that comes through of it. And as I talk, I'm kind of struggling to chuck in words that don't actually outright give this away.
Well, shall we go see what people think the cask is now then, and then?
Yeah, I think that's probably easier, because it's going to be easier to talk about this when people actually know what it is.
Ian, would you please repeat the ABV, because I think we missed it when you broke up.
Did you miss it? So it's 50.7%. So for the age and style, I think it was that kind of softer alcohol ABV that stood out for me. So that was kind of what swung it in favor of this specific cask out of the two I was looking at the time. And because we typically find that Glen Moray does, at cask strength, and particularly at this kind of younger years, hold on to its age. It's not one that loses typically quite a lot over shorter periods of time. So I think this one just kind of added that something a little bit different, so we weren't being too repetitive about these casks. So yeah, if you guys want to start shouting out, typing in cider cask, it's I always time how long it takes for somebody to bring up cider cask. So 19 minutes into tasting. Well done, Jamie. So you want to chuck in what you think it is. And
is there anything to do with Madeira cask in this, Ian?
No.
It's just that where everyone's writing it on a chat, you won't be able to hear it on the recording. So
okay. So yeah, if you are recording, if you want to chuck this in via voice, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to say I think that's the easiest way. I mean, a lot of people are going with the bourbons. I think, is that you, Jamie, who said Sauternes, or is that Fiona?
Fee said Sauternes.
Right, yeah, so I'm just trying to work out whether it's below or above. So yeah, Fiona said Sauternes. Because of the lemon and butter. Jamie said cider cask, obviously. There's no accounting for taste, is there? Sam was the interesting one that caught my eye as he's wrote it. Bourbon with a rye cask finish. So
I just finished the rye cask the weekend before, and I think I'm just being wishful thinking that there was another rye cask on the horizon, because it was lovely. But it nice dram. You know, it was just, it's got some kind of finish to it.
Yeah. Paul's obviously said white wine. I think the other Paul's probably hoping it was a stellar cask finish. But, yeah, Chris has said rye. Simon's a little bit of a rum note, but probably bean bonkers. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I did write... Obviously, I know the answers to this, but so I did write what it was. So I did get this one right, at least. So if you want to reveal it, then.
Yeah, okay. So typically, again, there is another criteria which I didn't touch upon, which is not so strict, because we've actually broken it with this one. And that is, we try not to make the next cask the same as the previous cask. And we have done in this case. And that is because it's a first fill bourbon. So we're following up the first fill bourbon that we had previously with another first fill bourbon. Part of the reason why I decided to kind of throw that one out the window a little bit today is because the first fill bourbon we did was fantastically well received. And given the fact that we were in lockdown, we weren't actually that busy at the distillery, it still sold pretty quick, and there was a lot of people still asking for it. So that's why I decided it might be fair to give first fill bourbon another shot at featuring in the Bottle Your Own. So a lot of you picked up on that, and it's that kind of lovely kind of sweet character. The rye is an interesting one, because rye is typically quite spicy, and for my money, this didn't have too much of that kind of spicy character. The rum from Paul, I absolutely get. If anybody is currently drinking our Curiosity rum cask, it's surprising how similar that is. And for me, I think that was part of the one of the issues I had with the rum cask. As much as I love it, I think the rum didn't influence it so heavily, and I think the bourbon shone through quite strongly on it. So I can understand if anybody has that one at home, why they picked up on the fact that it could be the rum cask, because there are a lot of similarities with that one. So yeah, so
I was just going to say, and that's interesting because where the lads have put the rye cask, I can understand it because I thought there was quite a bit of spice in there.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
You know, it's with this. I think the spice was muted, which, because you know, typically you will get a little bit of spice with a 10-year-old first fill cask strength bourbon cask, but here I think the spice, which a lot of the times the spice with bourbon is very much an alcohol related spice as much as it's anything, but here it's certainly muted in the fact that, you know, we have got something at this 50.7% ABV. It's funny, the other cask that we took, which is a sister cask of it, they sat side by side because I don't like to make the warehouse guys spend too long in the warehouses in the middle of February, because otherwise they're swearing at you, but the cask that sat beside it was at 59.6, I think it was. So this one just had that little quirk that I like to have and to stand out and to offer that something a little bit different. And here it's very much on the alcohol. I don't want to bang on about that too much. You know, the flavor is as I would expect with a Glen Moray first fill bourbon, full of sweetness, full of vanilla, full of those kind of typical kind of citrusy, appley notes. Which again, you know, the call for cider cask is expected because Glen Moray New Make Spirit is quite appley, very much toffee apple. So you're going to get that coming through still at this age of single cask. So yeah, I can see why a lot of people have called for what they have that didn't quite get it on the head, but I see the majority of you thought it was bourbon. So well done, you guys. Give yourself a pat in the back. I don't know if anybody wants to chip in now if that was the one they voted for as their favourite, or do you want to save that?
I mean, what Ed's just actually asked me the exact same question. I mean, we can do it now, or we can do it at the end. It makes a difference, really. I just thought we would get through. But yeah, I mean, if people
given you a complicated scoring system, we could still say people could say what was their favourite, and it won't. We won't know the order.
Yeah, the idea was at the end, you know, to sort of let everyone. But yeah, I mean, if people who voted for that one either want to put the hand up or something now, and then we can see.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked, because this was my favourite, and I actually thought, yeah, ex-bourbon Glen Moray. I actually thought, funnily enough, just the addition of water really helped bring out some more of those kind of like tropical fruit notes, and yeah, it's like the sort of thing that I really love.
Yeah. I find it a proper easy drinking whiskey, and John mentioned in the chat earlier that it is a good tumbler whiskey, if you know what I mean. And I think, yeah, sitting down of an evening, tumbler of it would be absolutely lovely. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, and this is very much hallmark Glen Moray, traditional old school Glen Moray character. Okay, a lot of the kind of typical releases were, certainly as we go back in time, were more heavily kind of reliant on second fill bourbons. But as we've gone through the years and as we've had, you know, change in direction or investment within the distillery, where we are now got a higher percentage of first fill bourbons, this is the style of whiskey going forward within core range, within the likes of our 12-year-old. You know, our 18-year-old is 100% first fill bourbon. We've got the signature range, which is our duty-free collection, which again is more reliant on first fill bourbons. This is becoming more and more a part and parcel of the Glen Moray bourbon style that will come out and be released. So it's nice to have included something of that ilk within this tasting, regardless if previously we had a first fill bourbon in the cask before.
Yep. No, I think that was a good choice by, you know, for selecting that one. And I think, like a couple of people have already said, if that was chosen, I don't think anybody would have any grinds to that anyway. But you know, we'll see at the end which one got it.
Yeah, it's funny. We've seen a lot of positivity around the collection here. You know, these are all great casks, I think. it'd be interesting to see if there's any, flipping it on its head, not something we typically do, because, part of brand ambassadorial work and everything else is about positivity and that kind of marketing approach of never highlighting the negatives. But I do sometimes like to do things a little bit different. And it'd be interesting if there's any within the set that anybody would absolutely not want to see come out. So just to flip it on its head a little bit, I like to see if somebody has got any staunchly negative views about any of the whiskies. So that might be an interesting thing. Hopefully we don't, but if be interesting to drill down and find out why that's the case on any of the collection, if anybody sits in that camp. Second one, or anybody want to throw in any comments around the first one before we progress?
I think what we'll do, Ian, we'll have a couple of minutes after each one, and then we'll have a proper discussion right at the end, and
okay,
and do it that way.
All right. Yeah. So try to think. Yeah, just throw in while we're chatting in between drams and allowing you to finish them. Since we last spoke, there's been a bit of change at Glen Moray once again. We go through years of calm waters, and then suddenly we have years of kind of in a brief period of flux. I'm sure a few of you are aware that Kirsty has departed, which I'm absolutely gutted about. Kirsty was, an absolute breath of fresh air at Glen Moray and fantastic to work with. So really, really sad to see her go. She's off to Halewood, for those of you who don't already know that. I think a lot of the decision there was that, Glen Moray's kind of one of the core brands that she got to work with. And I know prior to leaving, she requested to work exclusively on Glen Moray, but unfortunately that wasn't granted. So it was very much the brand work she liked. Unfortunately, a big part of her role, the decision in her leaving was that, a lot of the blending work is around unbranded blends. And, in fact, probably about 60% of her role was on the unbranded approach. So, she was very much keen to be more involved with brands, and Halewood offered her that and we couldn't. So, yeah, she's left and gone there. We have got somebody on board. Unfortunately, that's not been revealed yet. I'm not sure the situation with their employer, so I'm not going to reveal that here today. But it's very soon that will be the case, an announcement, which I think most of you on here, I'm guessing, will know this person. So it'll be a face that most of you recognise. So
when do you start?
I believe they start on is the 1st of March, a Monday.
It could be, yeah.
I can say it's
it is.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so 1st of March, that's when they start. It's offered myself a great deal of opportunity. So just speaking from a personal point of view now, in between the drams, I've taken over Glen Moray in the intervening period. It's allowed me to be more involved. So kind of pulling together the cask selection for the core range, working with our cask suppliers, single cask selection, and getting the lab and everything up and running at Glen Moray, which we have. So I don't know if any of you joined my Facebook live session. We've been sitting on a new lab for about 6 months. So it kind of got to the point where we thought we wanted to show off a little bit. So kind of pulling together sampling. So it's given me a greater understanding of the stock profile at Glen Moray, what we have, how we work, and I will continue to work more closely with the new blender when they come on board at Glen Moray. So looking very much forward to that going forward. So whilst the loss of Kirsty was not great and not ideal from a personal point of view, I've benefited, so I'm not going to lie about that and be two-faced. So that's been fun.
So allowing this bunch of reprobates could really go wrong for you for choosing the next cask.
Well, that's why I narrowed it down first. It's not like I've given you the keys to the warehouse and says, on you go, guys. that could be a career-ending decision.
Yeah, definitely probably would have been with some of these.
No, not from selection. I trust you guys. Otherwise,
just that there would be no liquid left.
Well, that would have been my fear.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, HMRC might have had something to say about that. But yeah, I trust you guys. I wouldn't have offered this would that not be the case. We have done this before, and I think Christoph, I think you were involved in a cask selection with Graham when we did a tasting for Spirits Bayside Whisky Festival. So we have opened it out to the public before, and it's never been a disaster. To be fair, I'm maybe slightly biased, but you know, there's not many casks of Glen Moray that don't hit a certain kind of tide mark of quality. So there's one or two experimental bits and pieces that you just wouldn't bring to the fore, but generally speaking, most of what we pull is of a relatively good quality from cask selection point of view. Okay, so I've padded that bit out, I think. Anybody will ask any questions about that? It's you know, as I say, it's kind of a weird period of flux. You know, we've been a pretty steady kind of distillery for many years, and suddenly the waters have been a little bit choppy with regards to personnel.
So I take it whoever comes on board then isn't just getting the Glen Moray. It's going to be the same as what Kirsty should have been doing and doing everything then.
Absolutely, yeah. And that is, you know, that is part of the role. You know, as whiskey maker, you know, we cover off. We have brands that you'll all know of: Carry Sark, Label 5, Glen Moray, and probably lesser known, but maybe some of you may know it as Sir Edward's. But on top of that, you have a lot of own label stuff sold to different markets internationally. You know, something which I've had to get involved with recently, which was a bit of an eye opener, and I can kind of see where kind of Kirsty maybe got a little bit deflated by it, because it's a part of the role which is very much done on an Excel basis, to be completely honest. You know, it's spending a lot of time in spreadsheets. The gratifying part of the role is very much the brands where, you know, it is done nose to face to nose. I don't know if I describe that with the liquid. So you are hands-on with what you're pulling together, and that is the more interesting part of blending, I have to admit. And you know, in the brief kind of 3 months that I've had an opportunity to be a part of it, I can see why that becomes a bit of a drag and a slightly harder part of the role. And ultimately, it's the only way the role can be done, because you know, you just don't have the time. And also, you know, it's the margins involved in some of these whiskies. You really don't want to give the time up to it. So it's a challenging part of what they do. So it's you know, it's different sides to whiskey, and thankfully Glen Moray, other parts of our brands and what we do are done the right way. And not to say that that's the wrong way. It's just the day-to-day running of the role. Okay.
Yep.
Next whiskey.
Sorry, could I just ask, did these casks originate with Graham or were they pre-Graham?
The years we're looking at, they're all Graham's period, because of the criteria that we apply to it. You know, to go pre-Graham, you have to go 15 years ago. So anything older than 15 years is Ed Dodson. Anything from 2005 to 2018, did he leave? 2018 is Graham, and anything 2018 onwards would have been curated and selected cask filled by Kirsty.
Yeah, I'm going to say, was it not 2019 he left?
It could have been.
Can't be that long ago, is it?
Yeah, it was still here in May 2019. He was still there. So I'd say either end of 2019 or early 2020.
He left in October, I know that.
2019.
Okay, so it's October 2019 then.
Yep. So that's the thing we're talking about.
Yeah, on to B then.
Yes. Okay, Dram 2. I think for my money, this was always going to be the more challenging one to pin down as to what it is. But one that I'd actually selected one of these casks, slightly older expression, for a release that did tail end of last year, which you guys wouldn't have got wind off. It went elsewhere, but I actually fell in love with it and was really keen that the next cask that we did on Bottle Your Own was one of these. As I say, this one's a little bit younger, so I was also just keen to see how it worked at that younger age. So again, like the previous one, and bearing in mind that the recording doesn't show the chat, if anybody wants to throw in any comments around the strength of this one. And also the year, because the last one I gave that away because of it kind of fell a little bit into the kind of top end of the mix. So we'll start with age and then we'll go on to year. So I need to read what it is.
I think everybody's putting their ABV. So we've got 57.2, 58.6, 58.8.
I'll give you a little bit. I'll give you a little bit.
52.5.
I'll give you a little bit of assistance on this one. This one's a nice round number. I always like that in a cast strength. So you can forget the points on this one just to save you that hassle.
About 58% on that one then, maybe?
Yeah, I thought this one was softer, definitely, but it's 8-year-old at 55. 7 years at 56, 8 years at 58.
Okay. Okay, well that's quite interesting because a lot of you thought that the softer one was stronger, and a lot of you think the stronger one is softer. So this is the strongest of the set. 61.
Wow.
That surprises me. Yeah.
On the nose.
I went 60. So I was one off.
So even though Andy was told there was no points, he went 60.1. Go Andy. Go Andy for no reason. Okay, so again, always quite challenging to talk about a whiskey without giving too much away. But I will tell you that this is 2014. So 6 years old.
Yeah. That surprised me because when I went into this, it did taste older than that. So do we want to go into what the casks are? Then it leaves you to talk freely if everybody has a guess now.
Yes, it makes life easier.
Yeah. So does everybody want to sort of put down? So Chris has gone rum. I can understand.
I thought refill sherry.
Yeah.
I thought this was rye, like lots of spiciness and some ginger as well.
Anybody else?
I threw in tequila or rye because of the spiciness.
Yeah.
Just from the age, since I have no idea how being outside UK, if it's very young, maybe you would go to a Virgin Oak and you wouldn't want to go older than that.
Refill Oloroso from John. Sam's gone second fill sherry. Simon's just gone for Spanish oak, so I'm assuming he's meaning sherry. He's just been very clever.
No, I like him younger.
No old virgins for Christoph.
Controversial there, Christoph.
Yeah. I mean, I know the result already, but I wrote down that I thought this was either a short-term Oloroso finish or it was Virgin Oak because of the spiciness. Andy's wrote Muscatel. Who else got this? Is that everybody's guesses? Anybody else still got something today?
If it is a refill Oloroso, you need to spotlight John because his celebration last time was fantastic.
He's going to be let down this time then.
So just to pick up on some of the points, some of the comments folk chucking in. Fee, sadly, we don't have any tequila casks at Glen Moray just yet. Right. It is something we're looking at as a company. We do have a tequila brand. So it's something we are trying to source some casks to get in. So it's not tequila yet. We hope to have quite soon. One person is kind of right, but nobody's is bang on. Well, I'm assuming they're kind of right because I'm assuming their comment is suggesting it's a full maturation, but it's not. It's a finish, and it's a finish in Virgin Oak. So, Christoph.
How long was the finish, Ian?
So this was finished in August 2018. So it's
2 years, yeah.
Been coming up to just up to 2 years. 2 years and a bit.
Oh, I didn't hear. What was it?
Virgin oak finish.
Oh, okay.
And
So
Christoph hasn't tasted it, so he's just guessing from the year as well.
Yeah, just from the year, because I wouldn't want to go too old with virgin oak. Sorry, Fee, about that. But
Do you know how long the finish was, Ian?
a couple of years. 2018, August 2018 for the finish. So no celebrations this time from John for being correct. And no scampi fries in this whiskey either. Maybe some bacon frazzles, but no scampi fries. It's got a kind of slightly savoury edge, kind of peeking underneath that kind of sweetness that comes with new wood. I absolutely love Glen Moray and new wood. We haven't done it for a long time, and as I say, I had to select a cask in November last year. So I immediately had a look for some virgin wood because I do like it. We do have virgin wood in the 10-year-old fired oak, but when it's at cask strength, I think it absolutely pops and comes to life. The previous releases we did was actually full maturations, and they were older, actually, Christoph. We hit the 15-year mark with the 15-year-old mountain oak that we did back in 2006.
Oh, yeah.
So we've been there and done it with old virgin wood. And again, that's always been the surprising feature of Glen Moray. You think that you've got a spirit which would not cope or survive with that long-term maturations in casks, which you would ultimately think would overpower the spirit. But it is a wonderfully robust spirit. And that robustness is really down in part to the fact that it's so oily. It's so viscous, it doesn't really seep into wood over time. It takes some time to pull it through. And a lot of the colour, Christoph pointed out on a discussion, I can't remember when it was, I think it was an image we posted on some of our lab samples around the colour of Glen Moray being generally quite consistent at cask strength. Yep. And I think I put that down a lot to the fact that, it's sitting on the surface of the wood where a lot of your colour intonation comes from the whiskey. So we do find a fairly consistent, and looking across the board with the exception of the bourbon casks, cask sample BCD that we have here, there is a real kind of similarity in color, even though we're using very varied and different casks within the mix. So I love virgin oak Glen Moray. And at cask strength and this style, I think it really comes to life. The ones that we released in December, that was an older expression. It was a 12-year-old we brought out, which was quite stunning. So definitely worth a look out for anything we do in virgin oak. As I say, mountain oak was a little bit different. It was part of the artisan cask selection that was instigated by Bill Lumsden at Glenmorangie, casks that were the wood was sourced from the Ozark Mountains in the US, where they were air seasoned. Took 2 years to prep the wood before they were made. They were shipped over to us in the UK, and they were actually intended as 2 single cask releases. One that was lightly toasted and one was heavily charred. Individually, they didn't work. So the Mountain Oak series was actually a combination of the heavy toasted and lightly charred, because combined the 2 flavors really kind of brought a depth and complexity to the whiskey, which to this day, having worked coming up to 16 years at Glen Moray, I think we struggle. We've come very close on many occasions, but for my money, I think we've struggled to top them. They are absolutely outstanding casks. And this has got a lot of that character and a lot of that feature to it, that real kind of intensity of the oak that comes through, and that almost bourbon-esque quality without being overly powered sweetness on the palate of this one. It's one which just keeps going. The bourbon cask we just had a kind of lighter finish to it. This one, it's been a few minutes and I've been chantering on for a few minutes since I can still taste it on the palate.
What was the original cask, Ian?
First full bourbon.
First full.
I'm going to say, if I remember right, when I was talking to Graham, he kind of I'm sure he said that virtually everything you do a finish on will have always been in first fill bourbon to start with.
Yeah, that was kind of a kind of follow on with Graham, purely down to the fact that we had higher volumes of first fill bourbon. We had the opportunity to do that, and it's a great move because it kind of means that your finish isn't, finishing. A lot of people get knocked, or you're just finishing to rescue a poor cask.
Yeah.
Well, my argument to that is, well, why wouldn't we? Why don't we want to improve that whiskey? Why don't we want to finish it and get something good out of it? But there's also the argument that finishing is a way of adding flavor on top of flavor and just bringing that extra depth that you want and look for within a whiskey. And we have done a lot of that. It's not to say that everything we do, but a big majority of what we do is first fill bourbons going into other casks for finishing. For example, the 25-year-old we have at the moment, there's an element of second fill bourbons that go into that one. So it's not an absolute exclusive, we only finish first fill. It's just that the majority of what we have is first fill.
So, I mean, there was a couple of people who picked this, I can't remember who they were, who picked cask B for their first choice.
I didn't, but for me, it was so close to my first choice. I'd happily have both. It would have come in joint if we were allowed to have joint, to be honest with you. I just think it's really different. It's lovely.
Yeah. So if you don't own up to it, I can tell you who it was. So
it was my first, and I think it was because it was so different to what I usually try. I just found it interesting for that.
I find it very forward at the front of the mouth. It's got quite a short finish, which makes me just want to keep going back and having a little bit more. But yeah, it's different to the rest of them completely.
Sorry, who was that chose it? I heard a voice, but I didn't see anybody.
It should be one of the polls chose it, I believe.
It's Chris. Chris in the cinema.
Yeah, Chris fessed up to he voted it. I thought it was my least favourite actually, but I still think it's a really nice whiskey. I don't think there was any of them that were bad, but this was my least favourite. I'm enjoying it more today though than I did earlier in the week when I first tasted it. So I don't know if it's just situation or what, but I'm really enjoying this one today actually. I don't know if I'll redo me ratings.
Interesting you say that, Paul, because I'm the same. It was kind of like, it was, again, not trying to give too much away on voting and stuff like that, but I'd rank it higher today, and I don't know if it was the time of night and, drank them in the same order on Tuesday night. Company, yeah.
No, just looking down, it's interesting actually, because one of the polls did choose this as their first choice, and they both just shook their head, which is a bit worrying now, but...
I'd written it down a different order than I sent you, because this one and another one were so close. So I think I wrote down the original one and I changed it when I actually sent it on to you. So
I think I'm enjoying this more going back to it, but for me, in the first time, it was the most interesting. And so, there's ones that you really enjoy, and there's ones that you can kind of find interesting bits in. And this one definitely found lots of interesting tasting and smells in it.
I'm the same as Sam and Paul in that this was my least favourite, but I am enjoying it more today. But just for my palate, it was just too wood driven.
For me, it was great
and grapefruity and
it was actually that bitterness, Claire, that I didn't really work for me. I found the sort of the nose was really nice, but just on the palate, just got a bit too kind of astringent.
See, that's quite interesting because I found this is why I was torn between whether it was Oloroso finish or a virgin finish, because there seemed to be a lot of sort of those sweetness and the dried fruits in there. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really find it very bitter, but it was, again, it's just one of those where I think this one you needed to spend a lot of time with it to start to really appreciate it. That's what I found anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'm certainly finding it better today, and it might just be because I've poured myself a smaller sample.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think the thing is though, and this is why I tried to do it blind on the original tasting, because once you start to realise what the casks are, you then start to change your opinions on them. So, this was one reason we went down the doing it blind route. So,
I mean, crucially, this is why we love whiskey. You go back to a bottle, weeks after weeks, and it evolves. And I'm not saying there's been much evolution, but your palate's changed, and the fact that there's 3 of us that are saying this is not completely different, but different, more enjoyable than what it was on the first time that we've had it. That's why we're all interested in whiskey. So that's a good thing. It is a good cask. There's not a bad one here. And if I was to rate them today, I'd probably rate them differently. It's just what you've had before. There's so many factors, and the fact that there's no smelly baby nappers nearby or anything like that, as people pointed out when James came in.
Yeah, but are we ready to move on? Yep.
Yeah.
Cask C then, Ian.
Cask C. Okay then. Same approach.
Yeah.
Anybody want to throw in any strengths into the mix? See how people have perceived this one.
I'm in between A and B for this one, so 55.
Okay.
53.
Yeah, so we're ranging sort of 53, 58, 6, 55, 52, 8, 52. So I think a few of them are certainly going for the lower 50s. John's coming at 58.5, Chris 52.3.
Anything I guess for any of these is going to be pointless because I've still not received my replacement dram, so I was working with about 5 ml of whiskey.
There's always an excuse.
Did you not get it through the post? We posted it.
No, not come yet, Ian, unfortunately.
I think you posted on Tuesday or Wednesday, so that's a surprise.
Listed on Whiskey Auctioneer, isn't it? Already.
I even sent it in a different bottle to make sure it survived the journey.
Nice one. Well, I hope it turns up because I tried my best to give this a score and it scored very highly. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so nobody is got it even to the right single digit. So I'm trying to find out who's closest. Simon, I think, is closest. So it's 59.8, this one. So again, in the higher realms, which is quite typical, as I say, that first one really stood out on strength. So this is what we would expect. It's, again, 2014. So same as the previous cask. And again, okay, let's jump onto the guesses before I go chucking out words that might lead you down a path.
So we're going on to the cask then. So what are your guesses on cask? So we've got Simon's gone second fill Oloroso, John's gone the first fill sherry. Oloroso or PX, John? Oloroso for Fiona, Jamie's Oloroso, John's Oloroso. Haven't tried any, but I'll vote for the oldest. Yeah, fair enough, Jens. I mean, as soon as I went into this, I went full on PX. That's the way I went with this one. Any more guesses? There's a couple more. Chris has gone first for Oloroso. Ed's gone PX. Sam's gone PX. Claire's gone dried fruit. PX. So I think
okay.
Is that just about everyone? So yeah, put us out of our misery then, Ian.
Well, I can't really because I'm not too sure myself.
So we're all right.
Yeah, you're all right. Let's go with it. It's on the system as PX, but I had a look at the cask and it didn't look like our typical PX casks. It looked like an Oloroso cask. So that was kind of part of the
No, you're not, John. You're wrong.
So it's on the system as PX. So let's go with PX. Yeah. Let's say PX. So it's sherry, definitely. It's definitely a sherry.
Are you going to sell it as PX then, Ian? Or?
Yes, because that's what it's on the system as. And it could very well just been a cask that came from a broker at the time that was, you know, a PX finish cask. That's not typically what we'd look at as a PX. So it's, just don't know. I'm maybe reading too much into the look and style of the cask when it is what it is. So on the system is PX. It's a finish, and I have to refer to my notes.
I think Paul's got it right. He's got Pedro Oloroso. I think it came across on a P&O ferry maybe. So
yeah, let's go with that. Let's kind of create a whole new sherry category. It was transferred into the sherry, we'll call it the sherry, in July 2019. So a little over a year in the PX cask or sherry cask, whatever we want to call it. Just, you know, I love Glen Moray and sherry, regardless of the style of sherry. I love sherry casks, good quality sherry casks. And good quality sherry casks are not as easy to get a hold of as you would think. You know, you can fill into some sherry casks that are just too spicy, too woody, too oaky. But if you get it right, it's worth the experimentation and all the kind of failures that sometimes come with it. But when it's spot on, it is always spot on. And I think this definitely falls into that realm or that territory. A little bit younger than probably we're used to with Glen Moray in this style of cask. We've done it peated before, but you've already got this kind of built-in flavour profile that can balance off against the richness and sweetness. But I can't think of us having done anything this kind of intensely kind of rich and full-on sherry at this younger age at cask strength. I think it works quite well. A little bit kind of diversion.
Can I just ask Ian, if this is obviously a finish in a sherry bottom, I'm presuming, is it? Or so is that 2 bourbon casks into 1 butt, or?
It's usually 2 or 3, depending on what's going in and the age. More than likely 2. We don't see that on the system directly. There is a way of tracking it back, but there's nothing visible to us off the bat for how many casks went in there initially. So yeah, usually 2 or 3.
And do you normally get your, so when you said it's a little bit different to what you're normally getting, are you just using 1 or 2 suppliers then for your PX? You know,
so yeah, so Graham had a supplier, but then Kirsty came on board with her contacts and her suppliers. So there's kind of been a bit of a switch in supply chain. Given when this was filled, this would have been Graham's era of cask selection.
Ian, just a question about kind of cask selection, I guess. You've obviously got, you know, whiskey that you're going to release as, you know, part of your core range. You've got sort of special bottlings and things like that. How do you, is there any kind of rhyme or reason in terms of, you know, what you choose to release, you know, just out of the distillery, and what is like a distillery exclusive, like what we're trying?
Well, usually we plan a year ahead, typically. So we've got certain expressions, likes of the Warehouse 1 collection. So this year's releases of Warehouse 1 have been mapped out. We've got the Curiosities taking a little bit of a back seat this year. So normally that would be in the mix. Single casks, we have an allocated number of casks on the system that have been selected of being of a specific quality that then goes to markets. So we have the private cask collection, and they will choose from that pool of casks. For the bottle your owns, it's pretty much anything that isn't allocated that looks interesting that we get access to. So that's kind of how we're working. The core range, obviously, is forecasted pretty far in advance, because you have to manage that profile going on, because we have to have, you know, nearest one to me, the Port Cask Classic. We have to fill casks. Like just last month, I selected the casks for the warehousing team to transfer for finishing for next year's Port Cask Classic. So that kind of things have to be kind of penciled in and managed in advance. But usually you're looking a year ahead. And it's just, it's a case of, people like Kirsty and Graham who are previous, them just looking at what's available via the cask suppliers that we have, what's interesting, what's different, what's offered to us. What do we have within our portfolio as well? Because within La Martini Quez, we've got great access to Madeira casks in particular. We've great access to port casks. Because we have a head office in Bordeaux, whilst we don't have direct access, we've got contacts within the wine category to give us these casks. So there's a lot of casks that are sitting in the warehouse that's not allocated, that's been put down and has no immediate future, that will just sit there until we decide that that will be something, whatever that is, dependent on volume requirements, quality of liquid, etc., etc. So.
Brilliant, thanks. That's really clear.
So there's a couple of people who chose this. Do you want to own up to it? Jake?
Yeah, I chose this. I thought it was brilliant at the time, and coming back to it is even better than I thought it was. So, in this, just like very rich, really interesting. Love it.
Did you get the cask right? What did you say?
Well, I said Oloroso.
Yeah, yeah. Simon, I think you picked this, didn't you?
You're half right then, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Any reasons, or
because I thought it was the better one?
Yeah. Was that? It's the one you got most of. Who else picked this one?
I did as well. I really love this one. I mean, it's a really close thing between this one and A.
Yeah.
But this just ticked all the boxes for me on the night, and with a bit of water, it just explodes. It's lovely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. A drop of water in this one, and it was just like, right, I didn't want to finish. I wanted to finish all the sample, but I knew I had to save some for today. Absolutely great dram, and that's why it got #1 for me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Anything else, Ian? Are you ready to move on to the last one? Yep. We'll move on to the last one then, Ian, if you're ready.
Okay. This one we know the cask for sure, so we're comfortable with this one.
I think you'll be surprised on this one, Ian.
What will people guess, or?
Yeah, right. I think this will split it, I think.
Okay. Or regardless of guesses, we know for sure what this is, so I'm comfortable with this one. Strength first. Let's just carry on as we have started the afternoon.
So Fiona's gone 57.4, Simon 56.4.
Yes, Christoph.
Sam's 54 exactly. Paul 50.
Can you raise the glass again?
Adrian. Ed's 58.4. Craig 55. John 56.9. Claire's 59. She doesn't look it. Chris 58.3. Christoph, the colour looked amazing. It's the quickest he's ever said that. Oh, I won't repeat the next one. This is the Blossom Hill cask. Not far off Simon.
Trying desperately to get a jam shaped cask.
Right. Do you want to put us out of our misery then, Ian?
Well, somebody got it spot on for the first time this afternoon. Sorry, I need to rewind because it flicked really quick past and missed who it was. But I saw somebody did get it right.
What was
it? Where's it gone? Simon. Well done, Simon. Got it bang on. 56.4. 56.
I thought you meant I was right with the Blossom Hill cast then for a moment.
Excited.
Sorry, he's called Lars.
I'm not sure Blossom Hill goes into casks, does it? It's kind of manufactured somewhere.
No idea.
Yeah, again, it's probably easier if we get out the way of cask guessing before we go talking about it. So on you go.
What cask do we think it is?
Dive in.
Not Blossom Hill.
Not Blossom Hill, no.
Is it Ernst and Julio Gallo?
Red wine. Jacob's Creek, Moscatel. Something red wine. Red wine. Red
We get
wine.
a point if we get the actual wine. You know, there was a Cab Sav or a Merlot. Are the points for that, or do you know that?
Well, yeah, just wait, and then you'll not want to answer in a minute, Paul. I mean, I'll be honest. I said, looking at the colour, I thought port, and as soon as I nosed it and tasted it, I went red wine. So
I think for me, after having a little bit of a run on some red wine finishes, it's when I drank it the first time, it was very much something I knew and I was comfortable with, which is why I sort of went with the red wine thing. So
I think this is
I'm probably going to get blown away completely with that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us it's not red wine, Ian.
Come on, Ian.
Carmen in brackets, the girlfriend. I love that. I hope your speaker's on and she can hear that, John. It could. It's a port cask. Port finish.
Yeah.
Port finish. Not red wine. Not Blossom Hill. Not Jacob's Creek. None of the above.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the colour does look port. You know, when you look at it, you kind of think port to start with. But yeah, I mean, as soon as I nosed it and tasted it, I just said red wine. So blown out, bang.
When it came down to this one, I chose it because it didn't, and I can see where everybody's coming from. It didn't actually taste like port too strongly, too overpowering. And I think that's what made it stood out, because the other sample I had for this selection was very much port cask. And I think for this one, there's a slight earthiness to it, which is not something we typically see in a port cask. And some of you may have been fooled into thinking it was red wine for that reason, because it's something which we do occasionally get with some red wine casks for whatever reason. Wine casks are tough to work with. They're challenging. They're all over the place. With a lot of casks like sherry and port and things like that, whilst you get some really good quality ones, they're generally off a standard. With wine, they can be a little bit all over the place. And this offered something different in port, I felt. Simon's asking if it's ruby. No, it's tawny port, which is pretty much the majority of the port casks we use are tawny port casks that we will take in from Porto Cruz. Here we've got direct relationships within the company's portfolio. So we're not buying these from any kind of brokers or anything like that. Where sometimes with brokers, you don't get that provenance. You're not getting that background in detail. You're maybe getting told the kind of grape varietal or style or age or length of finish within, or length of seasoning within a cask if it's seasoned. So you'll get that, but sometimes brand names and actual kind of that level of detail is not always given to us. When we get it in-house, we know it's from Porto Cruz. And I've probably touched on this because it's something which, you know, I'll talk about a lot within our tastings, is that when we are doing older whiskies within Glen Moray's, we do tap into port quite predominantly. And a lot of that is down to the fact that we have provenance, we have the confidence of the quality that we're getting, because we're not swimming in old stock at Glen Moray. So we don't want to take a 25-year-old or a 21-year-old or soon to be released 30-year-old and shove that into a cask for a finish and discover that it's an experiment gone wrong. So we like to play it a lot safer, and you'll see that our 21 is port finish, or 25 is port finish, and our soon to be released 30-year-old will be port and sherry finish combined. So we do kind of lean heavily into the port. And again, for that reason, without kind of want to bang on about this too much, my favorite of the classic range is the port finish. And I think it has really a lot down to the quality of the casks that we're getting through from Porto Cruz, and, you know, the length of usage within the casks. So this was a no-brainer to include a port. What was not so much a no-brainer was to choose one which I felt kind of deviated from the well-trodden path that we get from port. Somebody said, I think it was Fee, to go back, that kind of mushroomy character. And it's that earthiness that I think for me kind of shone through on this one, which allowed it to be something a little bit different from what we typically do with port. Because ultimately we don't want these single casks just to be single cask expressions of something we already do. I like them to be that little bit different and that little bit stand out, which sometimes can be challenging, especially with a company where we have got such a broad range of expressions. it's difficult. You know, when we have a finite amount of casks, we have a finite amount of kind of flavor profiles, which hopefully, you know, the cask will keep giving us something that little bit different each and every time. But looking for something different becomes more and more challenging as we go through the years and the releases that we've had. And for me, this offered that. I liked this one. I really thought it was a little bit quirky, a little bit different.
What was the age of this and the length of finishing, Ian?
Yeah, sorry, so this was again 2014 on this one. Sorry, no, that's an absolute lie. It's not. It's 2011. So a little bit older. And the finish on this one is 2016. So it's a much longer finish. So I think that's probably kind of part of the reason why we've got this slightly bit different. So earthy, yeah, some people saying that can be an off note. You know, this, when you get strong flavors, when you get kind of unique and different flavors, that's where you kind of polarize people. So, you know, Soren said that there'll be a bit of division on this one, on choice, on what it was. For me, I felt this one could be the most divisive. I think maybe the second one, which surprised me, has been the most divisive. But for me, I expected this one. And that's why I put it to the end. To be the most divisive around which one, people liking it or not liking it, because it had something quirky, something different.
For me, this was definitely the last one, but I did drink it all, so I haven't been able to come back to it. But yeah, there was just the nose and the arrival were great, and then it just tailed off for me.
See, this is my favourite. Absolutely love it.
Who else picked this one?
Yeah, me. Love it. It's like a punch in the mouth. It's all there all of the time. I think it's fantastic.
I mean, the interesting thing is, you know, from the people that have picked this as the favourite, and like most of us, put it down to red wine as well. So, you know, that is the interesting one. Would any of you change your mind knowing it's a port cask, that you would want a port cask, or not that it makes a difference because you're not changing your mind, but
no, I found this quite meaty, actually, sort of like Boolean. I kind of like got a like really kind of roasty sort of note to it, as well as that sort of woody earthiness.
Well, just out of interest, Ian, I mean, obviously you've tasted them all as well. What was your favourite in the group?
Well, it's funny. I was about to say to John, he's asked for 2 bottles of A, C, and D. And I was my answer to that is no, because you've missed out my favorite. I like B. I really like.
Yeah,
Virgin.
I'm still so torn. B and D were both up there for me.
B and D were my 2 choices.
Yeah, 100%.
B edges it slightly for me, I think.
I'm going back to D, mind after having it again today. I think it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
No, I think. I mean, when I tasted them. Obviously went through in the order, and you get to D, and I wrote down on the piece of paper, this will split everybody. And you know, it was one of those where, I kind of thought this was the one that would either be first or last. So it was quite interesting to see how it came out in the end.
And also, both B and D are quite short on the finish, which is why I think you keep wanting to go back and have a little bit more. It's a little bit more-ish.
But then I had the D and went back to the A, and it was just like, right, the A's just got more. It keeps inviting me. You know, I could sit there and it was a slow sipper. Rather than going back for it, I'm kind of thinking, I don't want a bottle, because I'm not drinking during the week. I'm only drinking on a weekend. I kind of want that slow sipper. I found that I just drank.
With B and D. B would be I fancy something completely different and spend a lot of time over it. And D would be I'm just going to sit down and enjoy this kind of whiskey. So.
Yeah, you see, for me, A would just disappear. I'll put that in a glass, and before I've even sat down, it would just be gone. It was too drinkable. Where I think some of the others, you'd sit and you'd save them a little longer. You would
but
take your time.
Also, all of them, their ABVs are dangerous.
Yeah, very true.
I'm not wanting to slow any of them down with a drop of water. It's just.
I mean, my feeling for A was, as much as I really liked it, I just felt it was so familiar. It just felt like it was almost a drink you could get all the time. And that's the reason I didn't pick A personally. But do you want to know what actually won then, or shall we just leave it at that now?
Just leave it at that.
Yeah, we've only been here for an hour and a half, so just leave it on. We don't care.
I'm going to need to know because I've got an empty cask that needs filled. So, just email it to me after. It's fine. We'll call it a day now.
I won't bother telling anybody till it's actually bottled. But I mean, the way it's split down, 2 of the casks got 5 votes each. 1 got 3 and 1 got 2. So that's how close it was. That's how many, for the first places. But basically so what I had to do, because it was a split and there wasn't really a runaway winner, I've placed them all, given everybody that picked the first choice cask got 4 points, then 3 points, then 2 points, then 1 point, and broke it down that way in the end. So basically...
Reverse order, Soren.
You're muted now, Soren. I think it was Simon that did it.
So that's the winner. So well done.
Oh, well, yeah.
Sorry, did you not get that right? No. So in 4th place was, who wants to guess what came last anyway? Should we? We'll drag it out. Really. D. In last place was B.
Yeah.
Wow.
With 26 points.
Ian, no taste.
It's all right. The next one's going to be that cask anyway.
Good. I want some of that, Ian.
So just to know, the next 3 casks, 3 points separated them. That's how close it actually was. So in 3rd place was D.
No.
Yeah, D came 3rd.
Well, I'm happy if I've Ray or C, so
yeah,
I'm
happy.
It's my order actually.
So I might as well just announce the winner rather than, because obviously if I do the 2nd place, you're all going to know what won anyway. So I think we should have a drum roll now.
I'm not that good at alphabet, Soren. Can you do them actually 2 and 1?
You know how long I took to decide whether it would be labelled 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, and D? You don't want to know.
Saturday night, was it?
Yeah.
So basically, D got 40 points, and the next 2, one was on 41 and one was on 43. That's how close it was. So the actual winner of the 2021 A cask on Glen Moray's Bottle Your Own, with an incredible 43 points, will be at £55 per bottle. Cask E. Oh, then you didn't get E, did you? Sorry.
Sorry.
Was cask C?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Happy with that. Yeah.
The reverse of what I put. Ian, I'm on your side.
Ian, can we buy a bottle of cask A anyway?
I mean, I will say, and I think it'll be mirrored with everybody, I don't think any of us would have been disappointed or overly disappointed with any of those that won. So
they're all really good.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want to just run through exactly what this was again, Ian, cask C.
So
it wasn't the Virgin Oak one, just so you know.
So you've got a sherry finish 2014 at 59.8%. Pedro Jimenez, so PX sherry.
Slanger.
Cask number 6012264.
601
2264.
2264.
It was me thinking cask C was Pedro Oloroso.
It should be.
Yeah.
Pedro Oloroso.
Yeah, Pedro Oloroso. Yeah, we've created a new type of sherry today.
No,
So most importantly, how do we buy it?
Pedro Oloroso is going to be the next Newcastle manager. So
if you just want to give us a quick brief,
anything but Bruce, mate.
When it might be online and things like that, then I'll stop the record and then we can carry on chatting off the record. Then, so when do you expect this one to be online?
I will email tomorrow to the office to get the HMRC duty payment on this. it needs to be filtered by the warehouse team. So I reckon we can have this live. We'll probably have it at the visitor center by Tuesday, but if we say Wednesday for ordering.
Wow.
Any issues, I will post on Twitter if there's any delays, because it really depends on how busy the warehouse team are.
Yep. And for everybody that may watch the video, so I think there'll be another 2 or 3 people watch it. £55 a bottle, Ian?
£55 a bottle, and we'll speak offline.
Yep, and it can be, if anybody rings the visitor centre up, obviously, because people can't visit at the moment, they can get it posted out to them.
Absolutely. Christoph, you got your package pretty easily, did you? Or you were our first ever test shipment abroad. It was a good kind of tester for us. It arrived okay?